Local Justice, presented by Elrod Law Firm, serving our community since 1980. Here's your host, attorney Ben Leader.
Welcome to Local Justice. I'm honored today to be sitting here with one of the most remarkable attorneys to come out of York County in a long time, and one of the cornerstone of justice here in York County. With a career spanning several decades and a reputation built on integrity and grit, I'm pleased to welcome former public defender Harry Dest to the show. Harry, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right. Well, want the viewers to get to know you a little bit first. So let's dive right in and just talk a little bit about your background, where you grew up, and what ultimately led you to the path of the legal world.
Well, I grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina. I was born in New Haven, Connecticut, and my extended family lives in the New York area. And my father moved down working for Eastern Airlines in the early 1960s. So I grew up in Charlotte. I went to Charlotte Catholic High School, went to East Carolina Undergraduate School, and then I went to Campbell Law School in mid-1980s.
All right. I'm a fellow Campbell grad as well.
There we go.
And what ultimately brought you back to Rock Hill?
Well, when I graduated from law school, one of my friends was Dan Hall, who was a retired circuit court judge. And in 1990, he was working in the solicitor's office and called me up and wanted to know if I'd be interested in working in York County as a solicitor. And I had to kind of put my South Carolina hat on because I was licensed in North Carolina, and I thought, well, what's a solicitor? Because in North Carolina, they call them district attorneys. But then he explained the job, and of course, I was eager to dive into that. I really wanted to be a trial lawyer. I mean, my background, certainly at Campbell, we had 2 years of trial advocacy. I loved the courtroom. And I thought, I really wanted to be either a district attorney, a prosecutor, or a public defender to get that courtroom experience. It's something that really I was attracted to, and it was the reason why I went to law school.
That's great. And so you came back initially as a solicitor?
I worked in the solicitor's office for about 6 months, and then I had an opportunity to join the public defender office. Now, in 1990, if you can imagine, the public defender office only had 2 lawyers and 1 secretary. And so I was attracted to the defense side. I think that was sort of my natural bent. And I was offered a job by Yale Zamor, who was the public defender at that time, and Gerald Smith was his deputy. And I got to work for them, and I really loved it because at that time there was so many cases that were pending, and I got to work on the most serious cases early on, not just the DUIs and the less serious cases, but I had an opportunity to do everything from a DUI to a murder case, or at least work on a murder case. And there was a time that I was offered a job in Charlotte to go back and maybe work in their district attorney's office, but I knew that the opportunity in York County was just something I could not pass up. And even though the pay was much less, I really loved the work, and I loved the people here, and I had a lot of opportunity to meet great lawyers like Tom McKinney, Jim Boyd, Leland Greeley, Jim Morton. Those people really shaped my view of York County and the community here, the legal community. And Tommy Pope, of course, was my adversary back then, and we developed a healthy adversarial relationship, but also I think we had a great amount of respect for one another because of the jobs that we had and what we were supposed to do in the courtroom.
That's right, and I know that y'all went toe-to-toe on some high-profile, contested cases over the years, but one thing I've always noticed between the two of you is the mutual level of respect you have for doing things the right way.
Absolutely, and I think that's important, particularly in today's day and age. This is a profession. We need to treat other lawyers with respect and dignity, and understand that they have a job to do and that you have one as well, but you don't have to be disagreeable. You can disagree, but you don't have to be disagreeable.
And I know a lot of young lawyers will start out with the DA or the solicitor's office or the defender's office to try to get some experience, and then they move on to private practice shortly thereafter. When you started with the defender's office, did you ever envision making a career out of it and being there as long as you have been?
I really did not. I had no idea. I mean, I started out in 1990, and I thought, well, I'm going to do this for a few years to try to see how much trial experience I could get from a selfish standpoint. I wanted to be able to be the type of lawyer that was in the courtroom, that was a strong advocate for their clients. And I just really fell in love with it because there's something about being a defense lawyer and the responsibility that you have knowing that the state is trying to take that person's liberty away in some fashion. There's an enormous responsibility, and I had the opportunity to work with some great lawyers. And of course, coming from Campbell Law School, where I think they do a great job of training lawyers, I had the opportunity to go to National Criminal Defense College when I was in the public defender office and look at other lawyers throughout the country to see what they do. So I think any lawyer, if they're honest, they steal things from other great lawyers or other lawyers that they think, okay, that's a great way to do it. And so I was exposed to so many different types of lawyers and styles that I tried to take a little bit from each one and that I could adapt to my own style.
That's right. Well, you've done a great job of putting the pieces together to develop your own style too. And you know, the passion about what you do is palpable, and it just comes out of you just in conversation. I'd like to hear a little bit about personally what justice means to you, what the Sixth Amendment means to you, and kind of how that's guided your philosophy through your career. Sure.
I mean, justice simply put means fairness, right? We all want to be treated fairly, whether it's in life or in the courtroom. And I think that, you know, the statute of Lady Justice, where she has the blindfold over her, I think that represents that justice is supposed to be that it's applied equally, regardless of sex, regardless of class, regardless of race, regardless of economic status, that rich, poor, black, white, regardless of your sex, regardless of your sexual orientation, the system treats you fairly. And that comes in many ways, whether it's in front of a judge, whether it's talking with opposing counsel, whether it's talking to a jury. I mean, all those things center around fairness. We all want a level playing field, regardless of which side we represent. And I think that's what we strive for. I can't say that we always succeed because it's a man-made system and certainly it's imperfect. But I think our framework that we have here in the United States and in South Carolina allows us to do that fairly well.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Harry. We've got a couple more segments coming up soon, including some interesting questions from some of our viewers for you. But we'll be right back after a short break. Thank you for tuning in to Local Justice.
As soon as I contacted Elrod Pope, they handled everything. Without Elrod Pope's help, I'd have been paying hospital bills for years to come. Elrod Pope just took the stress and they put it on their table and took it off mine.
Coming to Elrod Pope, I didn't have to worry about anything. Everything was taken care of. It put me in a real calm state because I had someone on my side. I knew that I was in the right hands. It felt great.
We know the type. You like to start early, finish late, make lemon squares, and make payments to the college fund from anywhere in the house. We know you rely on Comporium for the things you rely on most, like a view of the backyard. That's just a bunny, and hundreds of channels to watch, whenever you want. So you may think of us as just your internet company, but we're more like the I didn't know they could do all that company. Comporium, always ready.
Being there for someone in their time of need is what Green Funeral Home has done compassionately for 4 generations. It's a privilege we take very seriously.
We believe each life should be honored and remembered by family and friends. Whether you choose traditional burial in our chapel or another venue, or cremation provided by our on-site crematory, we will help guide you through each step to ensure your needs are met.
We are also available to discuss pre-planning. Peace of mind that you have helped your loved one by making those difficult decisions.
When the need arises, our family is here for your family.
At Founders, we know your finances matter. That's why we have loans for any reason.
Can Founders help us with our mortgage?
Of course.
Can Founders get me an
auto loan? Not a problem.
Nice.
Can we do something about this?
Home improvements? Absolutely.
How about just getting ahead?
Pay down some bills? We can do that. When you need a loan, our great low rates give you the opportunity to invest in the most important thing, you. So relax. At Founders, we're with you every step of the way.
Live Strong at the YMCA is a lifesaver for so many people.
I love Live Strong because you meet so many people, you learn how strong you can be physically and mentally.
The camaraderie and the closeness that you feel and come together as a group is just amazing.
We meet them where they are and we work with them to help them get stronger.
At the YMCA of Upper Palmetto, we are proud to offer our community the support of the Live Strong program to all cancer survivors. For more information, visit your local branch.
Welcome back to Local Justice. We're honored and excited to have Harry Dest with us today, former 16th Circuit Public Defender here in York County. Harry, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
I want to pick back up on that last question because I know you were eager to tell us a little bit more about your thoughts on the Sixth Amendment, and I'd love to start there.
Sure, I believe the Sixth Amendment is the cornerstone of the criminal justice system, clearly as it relates to people accused of crimes. I mean, in the Sixth Amendment, you have the right to a speedy trial. It cannot be undue delay. You have a right to a public trial. Therefore, there's no clandestine or star chamber types of hearings in the United States. You have the right to an impartial jury, which certainly is important. We don't want biased jurors. You have the right to be noticed on what type of accusations the state is levying or the federal government is levying against you. You have the right to confront witnesses. That means you have the right to see, hear, cross-examine any witness, or your lawyer do that. And then, of course, you have the right to compel people to come to court under the Sixth Amendment, which means under the power of subpoena, if you have a witness that's favorable to your position, that you can do that under the law and do it appropriately and have that person come to court. But most important, the right to counsel is in the Sixth Amendment. And the right to counsel in the United States means that every person accused of a crime that carries jail time is entitled to a lawyer, even if they cannot afford one. And so that particular principle, I should say, is something that is very important to me because it deals with the public defender system. And of course, in the United States, it wasn't always that way. Not until 1963 in Gideon versus Wainwright, where the United States Supreme Court declared that everyone accused of a crime in any state who was too poor to hire a lawyer would have one appointed to them. So again, that's really where I started my career here and expanded on that, and hopefully I've done a good enough job to make it a little bit better for more people.
Absolutely, and you hear so much about the First Amendment and the Second Amendment in the news and kind of the hot topic issue, but it amazes me that you never hear about the Sixth Amendment. People don't talk about it nearly enough.
Well, you know, if you think about it, the first 10 amendments to the United States Constitution, 4 of them deal with the criminal justice system, right? Fourth Amendment, unreasonable search and seizures of one's property or person. Fifth Amendment, the right against self-incrimination and double jeopardy. Of course, the Sixth Amendment we just talked about. And then, of course, the Eighth Amendment, which deals with excessive bond or excessive cruel and unusual punishment. So 4 out of the 10 deal with the rights of the accused. So it kind of gives you an idea of what our founding fathers were really focused on in the early days of our country.
That's right, and you know, those rights being infringed is not a fight that's behind us or over with. It's a constant battle, as I'm sure you would agree with.
Well, I think there's no doubt that's true. I mean, the framework is in place. I mean, we all want to have a better system, a more fair system, a system that people feel is one they get a fair shake. And I think that is always going to be our goal as lawyers, regardless of what type of law we practice. And it's a noble goal.
Absolutely. Well, you're widely recognized as being one of the leading attorneys in our area and experts on DUI law. And so I want to talk a little bit more about some of South Carolina's DUI law specifics, as I know our office frequently gets a lot of calls and questions, and some of our viewers have asked some questions about DUI law as well. Could you just walk us through the basics of what actually constituted a DUI in South Carolina?
Sure. It is not against the law to drink and drive, but it is against the law to drink to a point where somebody's mental and physical faculties are affected. Driving under influence means that someone has consumed either alcohol or drugs, or a combination of the two, to the extent that their ability to drive is materially and appreciably impaired. So those are the key words, materially and appreciably impaired, is what the government would have to prove to show that someone is under the influence for a DUI case. Under South Carolina law, a .08 blood alcohol level, one is presumed to be impaired. Doesn't mean that they are, but they're presumed to be impaired, and it becomes a jury question as to whether they are or not. I always tell clients, and I think this is true, DUI cases fall in 3 categories. There's the driving, supposedly bad driving. There's the field sobriety tests, which are administered by the officer to check to see if their mental and physical faculties have been affected by alcohol or drugs. And then, of course, there's a breathalyzer test. So those three categories of evidence is what the state generally has. And of course, in South Carolina, most of, if not all, the interactions between someone who was stopped and then subjected to police interrogation or police test, it's on video. But so that's basically the three categories of evidence that the state tries to collect to see if someone is impaired.
One of the questions we received, and one as a lawyer I receive all the time, and I'm sure you do too, is what happens if I don't blow, or what happens if I refuse the field sobriety test?
Okay. Well, let me say this. Refusal to take the breathalyzer test triggers a 6-month suspension to drive, but it also allows you to have an administrative hearing to contest that. That's separate from the DUI charge.
Sure.
So the refusal to take the breathalyzer results in a 6-month suspension. However, if you apply for what's called a contested case hearing, you may be able to get a temporary alcohol license in the interim before your case is resolved, your DUI case. Talking about refusing to do tests, I will admit, if someone were to ask me, what do you recommend if you've been drinking and you've been stopped by a police officer? Now let's think about the three categories of evidence, right? They already have alleged bad driving.
Sure.
We don't know how bad it is. We don't know if it's maybe left of center. He might have swerved a little bit. He might have made a wide turn. But that's just one piece of evidence. The other two parts, the field sobriety test and the blood alcohol level test, have not been done yet. So if you'd ask me, my advice would be, one, always be respectful of the police officer. Provide the driver's license and certainly the registration, whatever he asks you to provide that you have in your car. But I would refuse to do field sobriety tests. I would refuse to do a BA breathalyzer test. Just simply say, I respectfully refuse to conduct or perform any tests in this manner, and I'm not going to answer any questions.
That's great advice.
Because a lot of people say, why? And there are lawyers who would dispute that. There's some lawyers who say, wait a minute, I don't know, maybe you should show that you're being cooperative. But here's the real issue. How much evidence do they really have? At this point, all they have is bad driving. If one does not do well, and there's a lot of reasons why not to do well on field sobriety tests other than being impaired. And then if you ultimately do the breathalyzer test, that would reaffirm the state's position that he was impaired if he blows above a .08. So my advice would be not to take any tests at all.
That's great. Well, you heard it here first from one of the foremost experts on DUI law in our area. And so we're going to step right out for a word from our sponsors, and we will be right back with the rest of Local Justice segment with Harry Dest here shortly. Thank you for tuning in.
As soon as I contacted Elrod Pope, they handled everything. Without Elrod Pope's help, I'd have been paying hospital bills for years to come. Elrod Pope just took the stress and they put it on their table and took it off mine.
Coming to Elrod Pope, I didn't have to worry about anything. Everything was taken care of. It put me in a real calm state because I had someone on my side. I knew that I was in the right hands. It felt great.
At Founders, we know your finances matter. That's why we have loans for any reason.
Can Founders help us with our mortgage?
Of course.
Can Founders get me an
auto loan? Not a problem.
Nice.
Can we do something about this?
Home improvements? Absolutely.
How about just getting ahead?
Pay down some bills? We can do that. When you need a loan, our great low rates give you the opportunity to invest in the most important thing, you. So relax. At Founders, we're with you every step of the way.
Hi, I'm John Warden with Champion Services. If you're considering remodeling or making repairs to your home due to storm damage, here's a few things to ponder. A lot of folks have come in town promising a lot of things about we've been here for a long period of time, only to be found faults. Choosing the right contractor is extremely important. Here at Champion Services, our goal is one thing, it's customer satisfaction. And that's just not a sentence, that's a fact. Let me say it's been a joy to serve you for over 30 years. This message is brought to you by Champion Services and CN2.
Welcome back to Local Justice. I'm Ben Leader, and I'm here with Harry Dest today, former public defender of the 16th Circuit here in York County. Harry, thanks again for being with us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
We've been talking about all kinds of things DUI law, and got a few more questions for Harry as it relates to DUIs. One of the things we just talked about off camera a little bit was checkpoints, and just wanted to hear your thoughts. First of all, are checkpoints legal in South Carolina?
They are. There was a United States Supreme Court case came out in 1990 out of the state of Michigan where the U.S. Supreme Court declared that checkpoints are legal. Currently in the United States, there are 37 states that have DUI checkpoints. Of course, South Carolina is one of them, and so it is legal.
And I know in the world of technology and the innovations we've seen with self-automated driving and things like that, have you had any encounters yet where a DUI may have been impacted by a self-auto driving?
I have not. That's a new one. I have not had that situation rise yet.
I'm sure it's only a matter of time before both of us are dealing in the
Yeah.
world of self-automated driving.
I think it will be something very interesting and see how the legal world handles it.
That's right. And one thing else I picked up on is you mentioned how important it is in your opinion to be polite and courteous to the investigating officers, and just wanted to touch on that a little bit.
Sure.
I'm sure you've seen people that take the opposite approach, and that doesn't help them in terms of the results or possibly being in front of a jury.
Yeah. In my experience, I think about you're never diminished by being nice and polite to people, right? But I think when people refuse to give officers basic information or refuse to talk to them, not about the case or not about how many drinks they've had, I'm just talking about the initial contact with them. I think it's important to be as courteous and polite as possible, roll your window down, provide them with the information. Now, if you don't, I think it escalates matters. It makes it more problematic. In my experience, I've seen people do that, and then they have to bring other officers to the scene. They ultimately have to get the person out of the car, and that creates an issue that I think you want to avoid.
Sure. Want to shift gears a little bit.
Sure.
And talk about some of the kind of the highlights or the more memorable trials of your career. You've
Sure.
been involved in a number of high-profile cases, and one pops out to me a little more than the rest, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts as far as if there was one trial or case that was probably the most memorable or the highlight of your career. Which one would that be?
I think as far as jury trials, the trial of Angela White, who was a woman I represented in the late 1990s. She was charged with murder. She killed her live-in boyfriend. She stabbed him over 25 times. She was under the influence of alcohol and crack cocaine at the time of the incident. Her boyfriend also was under the influence of crack cocaine and alcohol at the time of the incident. And it was one of those cases that, she was defending her life. And unfortunately, she was in a relationship she had been in for many years, very abusive, violent relationship. So we asserted self-defense. We also asserted what's called the battered spouse syndrome, which means we're asking the jury to look at the case from her perspective as being a battered person. And I remember that, we didn't get a plea offer that we thought she could live with. We went to trial. One of the most important parts of the trial was she had told the police initially that her boyfriend was going for a wooden axe handle that he would repeatedly use against her when he beat her. Police ignored it, or in the original statement, it's not mentioned, but she told me she told them about the wooden axe handle. Now, of course, in those days, statements weren't videotaped. So all we had was a written statement, her outlining self-defense, but that she was trying to defend herself and she had to stab him because he was on top of her. He was much larger than her. But in the case, the trial, there was blood spatter evidence that was in the room, and a lot of the blood spatter was heading in a direction towards the corner of the room. And a photograph of the scene shows a wooden handle right near the last spatter of blood.
Wow.
So we were able to show the jury that with blood spatter evidence, you can determine the direction of the blood, where the altercation occurred, where it ended, and it was heading towards that wooden axe handle. So the jury came back not guilty. It was one of those cases that I think a lot of people didn't think we had a chance to win, but my client, was somebody who had really been abused her whole life, and so we ended up winning that case. I think that was one of the cases that probably sticks with me the most, that you just have to keep digging, you have to keep looking for evidence, you have to be one of those lawyers who looks at every single possible angle, particularly when somebody's life's on the line.
Yeah, and that reminds me a lot of similarities to the Janice Smith case in terms of the state's suspect is really a victim in and of themselves as well.
Right. I think the Janice Clark Smith case was probably the case that received the most notoriety.
Is that what led to Larry King and Oprah and those appearances?
Right, and she was a woman who had no prior criminal record and shot her father. And of course, we discovered that her father had been sexually and physically abusing not only her, but other siblings and other family members throughout the course of his life, and that she couldn't handle it anymore. So she ended up shooting him 3 times in the chest, admitting to it to the police. So there was no question as how it happened or why it happened, but it all centered around the horrific abuse that this man had inflicted on many members of her family over the years. Fortunately, we were able to get it reduced to a voluntary manslaughter, and we pled her to that charge. But in the process of pleading her to voluntary manslaughter, we had a separate hearing, because in South Carolina you can have a hearing on whether or not the death or the killing resulted in domestic abuse, a history of domestic abuse. So we reduced her sentence time by 75%, by showing that she was a victim of domestic abuse throughout the course of her life, along with her siblings. So she ended up doing about 13 or 14 months in jail. And then afterwards, there was a lot of media attention. But
sure,
it was one of those cases where you learn a lot. I mean, it happened out here in Catawba. She was isolated. Her family was isolated for years. And people can't understand how this can happen. But you have to always try to put yourself in your client's shoes. And even though you may not understand it, you have to really try to. You have to really care about where they came from, what experiences they've had, and that case taught me a lot about that.
And that's just 2 of many, many, many local residents who you've helped get their life back over the course of the years. And got a couple of lightning round questions for you just to wrap up, just for the folks to get to know you a little bit better. Favorite sports team?
I have 2, New York Giants and New York Yankees, originally from Connecticut, so my father was a big New York Yankee, New York Giant fan, kind of brainwashed his 3 sons, so those are my 2 teams.
What do you eat the morning before starting a big trial?
Just a small thing of fruit. I don't like to have a heavy stomach, so just maybe a little fruit.
All right, favorite soup brand?
Giorgio Armani.
All right, I could have guessed a few of those. Well, thanks again for joining us, Harry. It's been an absolute pleasure to get to chat with you. Really appreciate everything you've done for this community and helping preserve justice for so many folks over the years.
Thank you for having me.
Yep. We'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us, Harry, and we look forward to seeing you all again next time on Local Justice. All right.
All right.
As soon as I contacted Elrod Pope, they handled everything. Without Elrod Pope's help, I'd have been paying hospital bills for years to come. Elrod Pope just took the stress and they put it on their table and took it off mine.
Coming to Elrod Pope, I didn't have to worry about anything. Everything was taken care of. It put me in a real calm state because I had someone on my side. I knew that I was in the right hands. It felt great.
For over 7 decades, the YMCA of Upper Palmetto has been dedicated to empowering our community. Every day, we're committed to ensuring that every individual, regardless of circumstance, has the chance to thrive. From life-changing initiatives like the First Thursdays Club to unique health programs and vital water safety education, we're here to uplift, inspire, and transform lives. For more on how you can get involved in all we do at YMCA of Upper Palmetto, visit our website or stop by one of our 12 locations.
We can be amazing.
It's that time of year again. Time to spruce up your yard for the season. Visit Wild Birds Unlimited, and we'll show you how to turn your yard into a bird-feeding habitat that brings song, color, and life to your home. We'll even show you how to feed the birds with no mess and no critters. Wild Birds Unlimited. We bring people and nature together.